This is a podcast of Rivista Militare, release number 4. Good or bad, are humans aggressive by nature? Colonel Giuseppe Cacciaguerra.
South of the Congo River live our distant relatives, the bonobos. This species of primates is so similar to chimpanzees that they were considered the same species for many years. But bonobos differ, in particular, in their opposite temperament. They are sociable and peaceful. Is this a result of a long evolutionary path? Maybe so. What is certain is that females are at the top within their communities. Females are leaders. It is, in fact, a matriarchal society. Bonobos are not aggressive and do not make war on each other. War, however, characterizes another ape, the naked one, that is to say the human being, in Desmond Morris's famous definition, referring to war in a successful recent essay. Historian Margaret Macmillan mentions aberration. Specifically, war is not an aberration, best forgotten as quickly as possible. War, therefore, is not a disconcerting and disorderly deviation from the human path but one of its constants. This article will try, very briefly, to highlight the aspect of violence of this persistent presence because war is, first and foremost, organized violence. As war requires organization and planning, it was believed, until not long ago, to be a human prerogative. This type of violence, however, targeting other beings of the same species, also belongs to the animal world. In the 1950s, the father of pomology, Gaston Bauthal, believed that the only animals that know war as humans do are termites and above all ants. More recent studies have shown that even the mammals closest to us, the chimpanzees, but not the bonobos, use violence at a high level within their community and outside it. Regarding human ancestral bellicosity, the oldest archaeological evidence dates back around 10,000 years ago. In Kenya, near Narok, a mass grave was discovered. The results were published in the prestigious journal Nature in 2016. The reconstruction of that episode is clear. There is no doubt that it was a massacre. About 30 bodies of adults and children were found. Many are excellently preserved. The signs of violent death are evident. Furthermore, the hands of some of them were tied. In his recent original text, The Goodness Paradox, Richard Wrangham attempts an explanation through the theory of self-domestication. That is, men have selected their own nature, so they have chosen to be docile within their own community, where the level of reactive violence must be lower. Reactive violence is for self-defense, the instinctive type, while proactive violence, planned or cold, remained unchanged. In short, from the events of Narok to today, there have been few changes, less and less violence within one's own community but a high level of intolerance towards other groups. Let us now investigate the nature of the violence that drives us to wage war on one another. Is it instinctual, therefore biological, or cultural, therefore learned? The famed sociologist Barrington Moore Jr. believes war is the main cause of human suffering. However, he does not believe that violence or aggression is an instinct. He prefers to define it as an attitude. In fact, if it were an instinct, all populations on Earth should possess it. But this is not the case. Let us now try to verify whether humans are good at birth. Experiments by the Infant Cognition Center of Yale University come to our aid. Studies were conducted on a few months-old babies through puppet theater. The child watched a simple scene in which a puppet was sometimes helped and sometimes hindered in an undertaking, such as climbing a mountain. When it came to choosing, the babies always chose the puppet that helped, even to the detriment of their own gain. The bad puppet, in fact, brought 2 gifts instead of 1 like the good one did. In short, we are born good. Nobel Prize winner Konrad Lorenz also concluded, man is not at all bad from birth, but he is simply not good enough for the needs of modern social life. Ethologist Irenaus Eibel Ibisfeld, on the other hand, attributed fundamental importance to the cultural nature of man, culture as a sort of orthopedic brace to straighten human instinct. However, in the context of modern social life, an environment that only exists as a consequence of cultural development, a fundamental place is given to the ethics of obedience. Try to remember the monotonous answers. I just followed orders, given by the various Nazi slaughterers to the question why. The experiments that set the tone on the subject were those of Stanley Milgram in 1961 and, 10 years later, those of Philip Zimbardo. With Milgram tests, man's tendency to obedience was verified even when causing pain to others. In the experiment, shocks of increasing intensity were administered to a victim for each mistake they made. The The shocks were obviously fake, but those who gave them believed they were real because they had tested them on themselves. The victim was in a room, not visible, a detail that is not secondary. Sight is the sense that affects us most, and his moans could be heard. Incredibly, only 5 out of 40 people stopped before giving a 300-volt shock. With Zimbardo's experiment, a prison was simulated, and the roles of guards and prisoners were assigned to the volunteers who had decided to participate. The experiment got out of hand. It was interrupted after a few days because the guards had become oppressive and sadistic. In this case, the objective was to prove that violence was influenced by context and role in a specific environment. The results were, in both cases, shocking, despite the criticisms leveled at the experiments regarding their scientific reliability. They are unavoidable reference points for those approaching these issues. Also, in the attempt to explain the reasons for the Holocaust, bottomless violence, a true abyss into which the human soul fell. There are endless studies on the topic. Among many, Christopher R. Browning and Zygmunt Bauman stand out. In Ordinary Men, Browning studied the members of Battalion 101 of the German Police Reserve. With a workforce of fewer than 500 people, this unit was able to kill nearly 40,000 Jews in about a year. The numbers are impressive, but what is even more shocking is that the members of this unit were not fanatical Nazi anti-Semites. They were ordinary men, traders, workers, and employees of fairly senior age and even with dependent families. The thesis put forward by the author is that of competence to carry out a task of emulation and conformity towards the group, which has the positive quality of having that strength, which is used to massacre the defenseless. Sociologist Bauman goes deeper. First of all, the Nazis' considerable skill was to eliminate instinctive compassion. Then, through order and authority, they managed to remove responsibility from the individual by creating a substitute conscience. Finally, thanks to bureaucracy and modern problem solving, they made extermination processes as efficient as possible by industrializing them. The Holocaust, according to Bauman, was both a product and a failure of modernity. Hopefully, this very strong thesis will make us reflect on the weight of technology, especially today. Last but not least, it would be expedient for all our consciences to think that what happened was the work of men with mental defects, that is, pathological sadists. The answer is known, unfortunately not. The vast majority were people we would not hesitate to define as normal. Precisely for this reason, violence, which has always been man's brutal companion but not our biological gene, must be studied and explored. Recent massacres in Ukraine are the most direct evidence that anyone, in certain conditions, is at risk of morphing into a policeman of Battalion 101. History and justice will follow their course, but responsibility is individual. In the end, there will be a possibly identified man behind that finger that pulled that trigger, not an order or an ideal. Always and only a man, at least for the moment. In any case, we must be cautious in this journey because, as Nietzsche recalled, when you look for a long time into an abyss, the abyss also looks into you. To conclude, we go back to Congo, this time north of the Congo River. There, the chimpanzees continued to behave as usual, especially the males. They are aggressive. They constantly mistreat and beat even the females of their community. South of the river, fortunately for the bonobos, it is a completely different story. Over there, the leadership is female.
This is a podcast of Rivista Militare. See you again on the next episode.